Coming up on this Friday edition of Daybreak, the co-leaders of Korea's main opposition party resign, taking responsibility for the party's disastrous showing in this week's parliamentary by-elections. Two major home loan regulations, the loan-to-value and debt-to-income ratio limits, will be eased from today as part of the government's macroeconomic policy package. Plus, the World Health Organization and presidents of West African nations affected by the Ebola outbreak are to announce a joint $100 million response plan. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Friday, August 1st. Here in Seoul, I'm Mark Broom and you're tuned in to Daybreak. And we start with the substantial fallout from Wednesday's by-elections. While the champagne corks were still popping at ruling party headquarters, the leaders of the main opposition party, Ahn Cheol-soo and Han-gil, resigned on Thursday following their party's crushing defeat in the polls. Our Choi You-sun reports.
Apologizing for their party's crushing defeat in Wednesday's by-elections, the co-leaders of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy have stepped aside after just 4 months at the helm.
I take all the responsibility and will resign as party co-leader. I will work to make sure our party carries out major reforms to regain the public's trust.
Former independent presidential candidate Ahn Cheol-soo, who had ascended to party leadership after merging with the main opposition Democratic Party in March, said he too would do his best for the good of the party as an ordinary member. All other members of the party's Supreme Council follow their co-leaders out the door, claiming responsibility for the election loss. The leaders had been heavily criticized for causing friction during the nomination process and thereby lowering the party's chances of a good showing in the poll. Floor leader Pyong Chang now assumes temporary leadership of the party. She, along with an emergency committee, will seek ways to help the party rise from the ashes and elect a new leader. Different factions within the party are expected to elbow for position in the process. The one who's likely to be most affected, however, is Ahn Cheol-soo. Once considered a political sensation and a presidential hopeful, Ahn missed out on a valuable chance Wednesday to prove his reform-minded leadership in the party. And on Thursday, a bigwig within the opposition bloc, Han-gil, who lost a seat in the capital region to a ruling party newcomer, announced his retirement from politics. Son was considered a potential presidential candidate, and his retirement is expected to affect the dynamics of the opposition's next presidential campaign. Choi You-sun, Arirang News.
Well, as you can expect, the mood in the ruling camp could not be any different. Overjoyed and empowered by the landslide win, the Saenuri party can set about the business of revitalizing the economy and pushing through its planned reforms. Our Han-gil has more on how the ruling party and the presidential office plan to work together.
President Park Geun-hye has been given the green light to get busy running state affairs for the rest of her term. The ruling Saenuri Party's unexpected landslide victory in Wednesday's by-election has given the government a mandate to rebuild itself in the wake of April's ferry disaster and pursue its stated goal of economic revival.
The people voted for the Saenuri Party because the public felt the urgency to reform the country and revive the economy.
The governing party promised to support President Park in carrying out her national reform drives and not to use politics to divide the people.
The Saenuri Party will denounce any form of regionalism that is deeply rooted in Korean politics and will work toward bringing about national unity.
The ruling party's new chairman, Kim Moo-sung, is expected to use the election win as a mandate to carry out a complete overhaul of the party. With no elections scheduled until 2016, Kim has ample time to make his mark. It is also possible that he may equalize the nature of the relationship between the party and the presidential house of 청와대. The ruling Saenuri Party now has 158 seats in the 300-seat National Assembly. The main opposition party has 130. Kim Hyung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, a North Korean propaganda group has threatened South Korea and the United States, saying North Korea will attack if they go ahead with their planned joint military exercise, Ulchi Freedom Guardian. The Korean National Peace Committee says the headquarters of the governments, such as South Korea's presidential office of Cheongwadae and the White House, will be targeted. It also warned against testing the North's patience and its efforts for peace and prosperity by carrying out the planned exercise. Ulchi Freedom Guardian is an annual joint combat readiness exercise which takes place for about 2 weeks in August, and it is for testing and improving the two allies' joint defence posture against possible provocations from the North. And North Korea has begun issuing new 5,000 won banknotes and is also in the process of switching the old notes out of circulation. South Korea's National Intelligence Service says the North is currently looking into whether there may have been any stockpiling of the new notes in the black market. Now, it's speculated that the move is aimed at promoting some much-needed spending among the North's elite. The 5,000 won note, worth about $38 is the highest valued bill in the North, where per capita income is said to be about $1,000. The new notes include the portraits of both the North's founder Kim Il-sung and his son Kim Jong-il. Now, from next year, South Koreans will be allowed to change their resident registration number if they think their personal data has been leaked or in any way compromised. The 13-digit number, roughly equivalent to the Social Security number in the US, is assigned to every Korean at their birth, and it has been the country's biggest target of data theft in recent years. It contains basic personal information such as the gender and date and place of birth of a person, and they're widely used in financial affairs, from tax and property registration to medical insurance and military services, all the way to opening bank accounts or applying for credit cards. The Ministry of Security and Public Administration says it will come up with punitive measures against those responsible for leaking personal information through one's resident registration number. And the new measures come after Korea was hit by a massive, huge leak of client databases at major credit card firms and commercial banks last year.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, government measures to boost Korea's listless housing market will take effect on this Friday. Officials say it should get people buying and selling again and hopefully reduce the dependence on non-banking lenders, those with those sky-high interest rates. But as our Kim Ji-yeon reports, critics say it's only going to add to the country's mounting household debt problem.
Some government regulations on the housing market are being eased starting Friday, and the Korean economy is expected to start feeling the effects in the latter half of this year. The changes include easing measures that limit the amount that people can borrow from banks when buying a house, depending on various economic variables, including income. The loan-to-value and debt-to-income, or LTV and DTI ratios, are being raised to 70% and 60% respectively. This means home buyers would be able to borrow up to $340,000, up nearly $100,000 from the current total when buying a house worth $488,000. They'll also feel less pressure to turn to non-banking institutions that charge them higher interest rates. The policy has already started to bring some vitality into the housing market. The number of housing transactions in Seoul shot up in July, which is traditionally an off month for home buying. The Financial Supervisory Service says the amount of housing mortgage loans increased by 80% in June from the previous month to $475 million, the highest amount in 12 months. But the moves are also being met with concern. It's feared the deregulatory moves may lead people in their 50s or older into more debt. Last month, the amount of housing mortgage loans for people in those older age groups increased an average of 20% from 2 years earlier. This according to data from Korea's 4 major commercial banks. They were apparently trying to pay back debt accrued from self-employed businesses and from losses incurred after failing to sell houses amid falling prices. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The Korean government says it's raising its R&D budget to $12.1 billion next year, which will be 2% more than this year. 3 major sectors will receive the funds, namely space technology, disaster prevention research and future growth engines. And for the first time ever, $1 billion of that budget will be earmarked for individual researchers for the development of new technologies. So the country's R&D sector is feeling pretty good, but Korea's corporate heavyweights aren't faring nearly as well. Results across the board were lower than expectations in the second quarter, and experts say it could get worse before it gets any better. Our Connie Kim reports.
Korean companies turned in disappointing earnings report cards in the second quarter this year. Tech giant Samsung Electronics' second quarter operating profit this year dropped by more than 20%, taking a blow from lower-priced Chinese smartphones. Hyundai Motor Group's net profit also dropped the most in 5 quarters, hit by the strong local currency and the growing number of import cars in the domestic market. And the world's biggest shipbuilder, Hyundai Heavy Industries, posted its worst quarterly loss of more than $1 billion in the April to June period. The company focused on overseas plants as its new growth engine, but has generated loss due to low-cost orders. Experts say prospects in the latter half of the year aren't looking bright either, forecasting no big improvements from the second quarter earnings shock.
If the strengthening of the Korean won continues, it won't be easy to generate profit even if they launch new models.
The US dollar fell below the 1,010 won mark for the first time in July since 2008, and some experts forecast the local currency to appreciate further below the psychologically important 1,000 won mark before the end of next month. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now to some trade news. The market share of Korean products in the Peruvian market has jumped 3 notches to 7th since the 2 countries' free trade agreement came into effect exactly 3 years ago today. The Korea International Trade Association says Korean exports to Peru have jumped by an average of 15% each year since the FTA was inked, and it was led by chemical products, which accounted for a 7% market share in Peru last year. Now, this week and the next are generally considered the peak summer vacation period here in Korea. Often it's when vacationers head off to a big trip overseas, but this year many are choosing to spend their break at one of the many of Korea's prime holiday spots. Our Shin Se-min reports.
The peak summer vacation season is here. From late July and early August every year, more than half of Korea's population takes time away from their daily grind to go on vacation, especially now that school's out.
My 11-year-old daughter is free from school and academies these 2 weeks, which is why we're taking our family vacation now.
Many Koreans tend to go overseas for their holiday, but this year, with the economy stagnant due to the nation's April ferry disaster, vacationers are opting to stay within the country, resulting in consumer prices on vacation-related products to surge 0.7%. Among the numerous sites to visit, many are choosing to head to beaches or valleys to beat the heat. Popular destinations like the southeastern port city of Busan are overloaded with people enjoying the sun and surf. Filling almost every inch of the 1.7-kilometer stretch of sand, the nation's largest beach has already welcomed over 1.5 million people this past Sunday alone.
Spending my vacation with my friends in Busan couldn't have been better. We've planned many things during our stay.
As an office worker, it wasn't as easy to take days off for the vacation, but now that I'm here with my girlfriend from Japan, I plan to eat and show her as many attractions in Busan.
And with the week-long Busan Sea Festival kicking off this Friday, including concerts and bikini competitions, the city is sure to attract even more visitors.
It's crowded and can be expensive, but that hasn't stopped the flow of vacationers descending on Busan in the past and won't this year either. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Busan.
Okay, well, it's time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Friday morning. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, who's standing by at our news centre. Hello there, Eunice.
Good morning to you, Mark. The number of people who have died in the largest Ebola outbreak on record has now exceeded 700, mostly in the West African states of Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. The Director General of the World Health Organization, Margaret Chan, will meet with the presidents of the affected countries in Conakry today, where they are expected to announce an intensified response plan. The $100 million plan to fight the outbreak on a national and global level will send in more personnel and resources to supplement overstretched treatment facilities. Meanwhile, Liberia and Sierra Leone have now both declared a public health emergency, dispatching soldiers to quarantine-stricken neighborhoods, banning public meetings for months, and closing down schools across the country. Almost half of the recent Ebola deaths have come from Liberia, where an American doctor and missionary are also being treated for the contagious virus. There is currently no cure or vaccine for the Ebola virus, which has a fatality rate of up to 90%. In Gaza, no sight of a lull in the bloodshed as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promised to annihilate Hamas's tunnel network with or without a ceasefire. The Israeli military has called up an additional 16,000 reservists, as it said most of the 32 tunnels it had identified have been destroyed. The cross-border tunnels were being used to access and attack Israel from Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu said any ceasefire agreement that does not allow Israel to destroy the, quote, terror tunnels would not be considered. Meanwhile, in its strongest words yet, the United States has called the shelling of a UN school in Gaza totally unacceptable and totally indefensible, and urged its ally Israel to do more to protect civilians. The United Nations says a quarter of Gaza's population has been displaced by the fighting and that it is running out of resources to support the nearly 250,000 refugees seeking shelter. And turning now to Argentina, where Latin America's third largest economy has defaulted after last-minute talks failed to produce an agreement from the country's bondholders. The second default in 13 years stems from a years-long legal battle with two of Argentina's bondholders who had rejected restructured debt agreements in 2002 when the country first defaulted, blocking payments to other creditors. Global ratings agency Standard & Poor's has downgraded Argentina's foreign currency rating to selective default. Argentina's cabinet chief has blamed the U.S. for the debt default, calling the mediator in New York incompetent and saying his country was considering a case at international tribunals. And some mixed news out of Ukraine, where international experts have reached the crash site of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 after multiple attempts. The team of more than 50 Dutch and Australian police and forensic experts will initially focus on collecting bodies still lying out more than 2 weeks after the shootdown. It is unclear how many bodies are still missing and what else the team will find at the site. Separatists continued to engage in fighting while Kiev said it had suspended its offensive operations in the region to help the experts reach the site.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we continue on with the ongoing search for the next head coach of the South Korean national football team. Now, Lee Yong-soo, the head of the technical committee, holding his two-day meeting with this committee, said that it's been revealed that the choice has been broken down to final 3 coaches. And just like it was expected, the final list of the candidates were all foreign coaches, as Lee Yong-soo and his technical committee will now look into different criteria before choosing from the final list. He added that some of the things that they're looking into are experience internationally and with their club team, age, English-speaking skills, and so on. And while the names of the 3 have not been revealed, it seems the committee is on track to choose their next head coach in the near future. Now, speaking of selections, after Thursday, the 2018 Pyong Chang Winter Olympics Organizing Committee has a new chief, as Han-gil Group President Choi You-sun was elected as the newest head of the committee. Now, just 10 days after Kim Jin-sun resigned as the head of the organizing committee, Choi You-sun was elected on Thursday. This, of course, pending the approval of the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism. Now, Cho was an important part of the bidding committee back in 2011 when Pyeongchang was finally given the green light to host the 2018 Winter Games. Now, he also has an impressive resume when it comes to sports administration, as he is one of the 3 vice presidents of the Korean Olympic Committee as well. And now moving over to baseball, where ESPN named the top 10 worst signing during the past offseason based on the numbers put up by the players so far in the 2014 MLB season. And for South Korea's Choi You-sun, well, he's up there as well. According to ESPN, Choi You-sun signed a 7-year, $130 million deal this past offseason with the Texas Rangers, has been listed at number 5 in the worst free agent signing so far. The article added that he's been sidelined by an ankle injury and has only hit .240 so far, with an on-base percentage of just .351. And making the top of the list is his teammate Prince Fielder, who is sidelined for the remainder of the season after signing a huge contract with the Texas Rangers as well. And now finishing things off with some Thursday night KBO action, the NC Dinos cruised past the Kia Tigers 9-1 with the Samsung Lions, beating the LG Twins 8-4, and the Lotte Giants crushed the struggling Tucson Bears 13-3. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Nexen Heroes try for the sweep against the Hanwha Eagles. And of course, going into the game, here we jump over to the second inning. Hanwha strikes first thanks to Lee Han-gil's RBI single to left, scoring Kim Tae-gyun as they take a 1-0 lead. But check this out, Chung Bo-mo drills this one to deep left, gone a 3-run shot, and Hanwha takes an early 4-0 lead. 4th inning of the game, here come the Nexen Heroes. Kang Jong-ho with an RBI single off the shortstop, and it's 4-1 before Kim Min-sung. He makes this 4-3 with a 2-run shot to deep center. Now, 5th inning of the game, Park Byung-ho, an RBI single to right field, and we're tied 4-4. 8th inning, Hanwha up 6-5, Felix PA, and there it goes, a 3-run shot, and Hanwha extends their lead to 9-5. Now, bottom of the 9th, Park Byung-ho, and that's number 33 on the season, sparking a 3-run 9th, but the Hanwha Eagles hang on to win this one 9-8. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Well, Han Gyeongsang in Gyeongsang-Bukdo province marked 39.9 degrees Celsius yesterday, and here in Seoul, we saw a high of 34.4 degrees Celsius. It was so hot, and a heat wave watch was in place for almost all regions yesterday. And for today, temperatures should be tad lower than yesterday. Well, that's for the people down south, and with the rain, and that's due to influence of the typhoon Nakri. So it started to rain already, and people in the southern provinces should receive heavy rainfall of up to 100 millimeters, and Jeju could see a torrential rain during the day. So please keep that in mind, and let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The morning low here in Seoul is starting out at 25, then the high will rise to 34, while Daegu will climb to 31, and Gwangju and Busan should have a daily highs of 28. Now, for other regions, it looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon will top out at 28 and 31, and Dokdo should see highs of 29, while Mount Keungang reaches at 22. Well, that's all I have for you at this hour, and hope you have a wonderful start to the Friday.
Thank you very much, Jion. Enjoy your weekend as well. And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Korea Today is coming up in about half an hour's time. We'll be back throughout the day with many more news updates, and I'll be back at 10 a.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.